Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Montana Business Vlog. I'm Joel Silverman, your host here from Silverman Law Office, where we are connecting business people across the state of Montana and this great country of ours. Today, I am a lucky man. I get to learn some of my favorite stuff, which is outdoor sports. We've got Rex Seeley from Montana Outdoor Sports right around the corner from us here. Welcome, Rex.
Thank you, Joel.
Well, hey, we're very lucky to be here, everybody. We want to throw out a big shout out to TopFloor Studios and also our main man, Brad Oldhouse, behind the camera and the sound quality here with SocialFlixx. You can find us on our podcasts, on all the different podcast channels, as well as YouTube and at mttaxlaw.com. So, Rex, what is going on that's new in the world of sports?
Well, primarily it depends on what aspect you're looking at. We have quite a variety, but in firearms, the thing that I'm glad to see is it's going back to traditional things like hunting. People are looking at now getting out hunting, and what they're looking for more, it seems, is the accurate rifle. They're trying to get better accuracy because when they go hunting, they want to make sure they get the job done with one round. So that's working out good. Fishing is ever-changing, especially our neck of the woods where the walleyes are really, really taking over. And it's fun looking at all the new tackle because it changes almost daily. It's really, really changing. Backpacking seems to be going down a little bit more towards like car camping and short-term like hikes with short backpacking stints, just weekends and stuff like that. The longer backpacking seems to be phasing out a little bit. And water sports are picking up. We sold more canoes last year kayaks last year than we've ever sold. The canoe market is totally ended, it seems. And a lot more people are buying rafts so they can enjoy the rivers around Montana. But the kayaks are the ones that have really taken off. They're easy for people to hop in, paddle around Spring Meadow or one of the local lakes. And stand-up paddleboarding has changed a little bit. It used to be everyone on the hard shell type paddleboards. Now they're looking at the inflatables because they're easy to store, easy to transport, easy to carry. And you can blow them up, and they're just as rigid as a hard shell.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. My wife and I have two inflatable stand-up paddleboards. They're unbelievable. I was just really shocked by them when we first tested them out from you a couple years ago. And it's just amazing how hard they are and how well they hold up. We have beat the daylights out of them. So I really like that. Hey, Rex, I kind of jumped the gun here. I got so excited to get you on the mic here that I jumped right into what's new in outdoor sports. But how'd you get started in this industry? What got you there? And what are some of the crazy big changes you've seen in the industry overall?
Well, originally I got out of the military and I was going to school at Carroll and I needed to make some money, so I got into reloading ammunition. And that's pretty much how I got the start. I got a firearms license at the time, started selling firearms. And then after I got out of school, I decided I liked sporting goods and such better than I liked working. So I decided I'd get into the sporting goods market and start selling my hobbies. And, being kind of a slacker, I preferred to do what was fun rather than work. So we started expanding. First it was scuba, then we got into a little more backpacking. Then we got into the water sports and fishing, and it just kept evolving that way because our hobbies are, what I took off with, just having fun doing things. So I figured I'd sell what I enjoyed doing. And it's like having a raft. I don't want to pay the money for a raft, but it's sure nice to have a rental raft I can take anytime I want.
So what are some of those big crazy changes that have happened since you first opened your doors?
Well, as far as again, back to water sports, the biggest thing was back in the early days, it was all canoes and some rafts. Now it seems to be more kayaks have really taken over because the kayaking industry back then was just really the hardcore, big open water type kayaks, the big sea kayaks and such were really popular. And that's what everyone wanted. They're still very popular because if you want to go somewhere, that's the way to go. Then they've modified them. You can use sails with them and kites. And what's happened is you see the evolution of like the inflatable kayaks. Paddle boards have taken over, and the smaller kayaks, little fun kayaks, have really kicked in. As far as the biggest change seems to be inflatables that work. That seems to be the big thing. Inflatables, like for, again, the stand-up paddle boards and kayaks. In the camping, it used to be you'd get a lot of hardcore backpackers and climbers, and they would stay out for longer periods of time, like spend, 5-8 days out. Now you still get a few of them, but not as much. It's more like, it's people are looking for an experience. They want to have fun. They want to have something they can remember. And long-term camping is a true experience, but it's a lot easier just to go out for a weekend, go for a couple days, car camp, take some quick hikes, go to one of the parks that we're fortunate to have around here, and walk some of the trails. And that seems to be the big thing I'm seeing. And even when I travel other locations, that's what you see people doing a lot is taking the day hikes more so than actually camping out or staying in nicer accommodations, when they're camping. And one of the things that makes nicer accommodations are the better tents, the much, much better lightweight boots instead of having real heavy boots that drag you down all day, and having a really nice sleeping pad to sleep on at night.
So what are some of the things that a family should have in their arsenal if they're going to do a great, fun family camping trip?
The biggest thing, like if they're going out, is make sure, if they're looking at a tent versus a camper, is make sure you get a tent that's suitable for the weather. Because one of the big issues is there is nothing more miserable than you remember when you're a kid being out in a tent and the tent being wet, or an old canvas tent, you touch the wall, next thing you know it's dripping on you. That's one of the big things you have to watch, is make sure you get a tent that's capable of the weather you want. The new tent materials are just fantastic, and they've gotten to the, like the materials that'll take the sun really well and not, die after a few seasons. And the big thing is, you have to make sure you got a good polyurethane coated floor so it's waterproof, and make sure that the fly that you have over the top is going to take whatever weather you have, like 4-season for winter camping and a 3-season with a good fly to keep the rain off and still be able to ventilate, where you can pull the top off, have a lot of mesh on top, and let it stay cool. But the big thing for me anymore, as I'm getting older, is I want to be comfortable. I'm not onto the big, how light can I go for how many days and how miserable will it be. I want to go light. I want to go comfortable. I want a nice pad. And I want a sleeping bag that's going to keep me warm. And that's the nice thing about it now. The sleeping bags, the materials have evolved so well that they've got, they've always spoken about like synthetic downs, but they now actually have materials that are working really well. Still, nothing beats a good down bag, but the synthetics are really doing well. And they're light bag if you're going to be packing, and a nice pad. They got some nice lightweight pads, and it's just makes it comfortable. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't have to live in misery to go camping. It's just a lot of fun. Freeze-dried foods have gotten unbelievably light, and the camping equipment has gotten fantastic. I mean, if you want to keep like a little base camp and then go overnight hiking or something like that, they've got great ovens you can take with that are lightweight enough that you can car camp with them. They're small enough. The cooking utensils, titanium utensils. But the big thing is that I like about it is you can bake, you can cook anything you want, and you can make espressos out there. You can have lattes. You can have pretty much anything you want. You can have all the comforts of home, but be out in a beautiful scenery. I mean, Helena's beautiful now. You look around and it's fantastic, but getting out of town where there's nobody there, that's the nice thing about Montana. You can go where there's nobody, and you are by yourself. And then you look up at night, and it's dead quiet, and it's just so beautiful. It's unbelievable.
We are very fortunate to live here where people want to come vacation, and we get to live here, so we get to go out and experience things when oftentimes nobody's around, right?
Yes.
So where are some of your favorite places to send people here?
Well, like my biggest thing is we get a lot of people that are coming into town, and we've got the downtown hotels, and they're going to be wandering around wanting to know where to go. And the biggest thing I do we get a lot of tourists here and a lot of local people asking questions and stuff. And the big thing I like to point out are the South Hills. It's easy to get someone on Mount Helena, and the South Hills are fantastic. And again, this is one of the top places for mountain biking and hiking. It's unbelievable. We have the second biggest city park in the U.S. New York is the only place that beats us. And we've got some great maps. We've got the Prickly Pear map for the South Hills mapped. We've got Janice, I cannot think of her last name, has some great hikes for around Helena. And we have got that book. It's very reasonably priced. And the South Hills are where I send people if they want to go close. You can mountain bike, you can hike, you can take anything. You can take your dog, take the kids. It's fantastic. One of the ones that I like to send people is up to Dearborn. It's a real easy one. You go up by Bean Lake, take a walk in. You walk across a little bit of private property, and you can walk all the way into the Scapegoat. It's an easy hike, and that's some of the first hikes I took my kids on. Not a big vertical rise. It's just a nice, gentle rise. It's an easy walk in, and again, you're in some beautiful grassy areas, and it is fun.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive how many trails there are, within an hour of Helena. It's just amazing. You can go north, south, east, west. There's just so much opportunity out here. And one of the things we're really blessed about, too, is we don't have the big population bases or the large draws of, say, Missoula or Bozeman, Glacier. So, the trails really are empty around here. It's pretty unbelievable.
It's like going up to Crow Creek Falls. In the middle of the summer, prime time, you can go up there, and I've gone up several times when there's been nobody there, and once in a while, there'll be a car in the lot, but you never see the people.
Yeah.
It's just great.
Yeah, there's some really neat hikes, too, between Helena and Butte. Right up in Elk Park, and nobody's up there, right? It always blows my mind. So, Rex, when you're talking about getting into business, in the outdoor business, what were some of your biggest fears about jumping into the business world?
The biggest fears I had is how to pay the bills. When I first started out, it wasn't an employee issue. It was just me. I was it. And then I'd have one of my buddies working for me part-time, so it was pretty simple. But the biggest issue that I had, was, being awake at night, wondering how I'm going to pay for this product that I purchased from a distributor, and I have so long to pay for it, and how am I going to come up with that money? And I had a lot of sleepless nights thinking about that. How am I going to pay? How am I going to pay? And I didn't want to borrow money. That was one of the big issues. I was fortunate. I got out of the military. I had a disability. I got kicked out because of my leg. And that helped me make it through. And it really worked out well. And the biggest thing that I found about being in business and dealing with distributors and having to pay those distributors and not necessarily having the money, you talk to them. You tell them, I just can't do it this month. And that's all they want to hear most of the time is just, thanks for letting us know. We'll extend your terms a little bit, let you go out a little longer, and just let us know what your plan is. And that was a big thing, is I was fortunate where the distributors I started dealing with were just fantastic. And you just get to the realization you do the very best you can and make it happen, and they work with you.
It's amazing you say that, because so many times I see from clients who are inventory-based clients that they get behind and they do what I call the ostrich move or the turtle move. They put their head in the sand, or they tuck their head back in the shell, rather than calling their vendors, their distributors and saying, hey, I'm struggling here. Here's my plan to get out. Give me a little time. Because none of the vendors, none of the distributors want to be stuck holding the bag on that product. And they don't want to get it back either. Their job is to get you to go sell it. And so I just can't stress enough to our folks out there, if you just call and talk to them, it's amazing what they'll do for you.
Yeah, that's truly the issue, because that's what I find is they understand that this can happen, and they understand it does happen. And that's all they want to do. They just want to hear from you. It's just like rentals. If I hear from one of my renters that they can't pay the rent, I'm happy about it. I'm not happy I'm not getting paid, but I'm happy to hear from them. I realize things happen. People have problems. Issues come up. Anything can happen and prevent you from being able to pay your bills. But the whole thing comes down to, it doesn't matter if it's the person you're renting from, the power company, whoever. You need to talk to them, and that's the big thing. Because you talk to people, they understand, and you can always work something out.
Absolutely. So what have been some of your biggest hurdles since you opened your doors in being as successful as you've been?
Early on, it was, again, paying the bills, having enough inventory, having the right inventory. Getting the customers through the door has always been an issue, because I would say probably 90% of our business truly is word of mouth and repeat customers. And that seems to be where we get most of it. And I really hate to say my biggest issue with business is advertising. You know, I realize you have to advertise. I realize you have to look at all the medias. I realize you have to do everything there. And the advertising people are more than happy to help you. But the problem is you start trying to analyze everything like, where is my money best spent? And how can I definitively say print is working, radio's working, TV's working, the internet's working, what's working the best? And that's the problem, you can't. I mean, it's like everyone says, if you put something out, like if you have some great promotion or something, well, that'll attract the attention, but you have to have, some kind of top-of-mind awareness so you're continually in front of people to keep them coming in, and that's the big issue is I change and I change and I change, because I've been doing this for better than 30 years, and one time I'll think radio's fantastic, next it's TV, next it's print, and then, oh man, I got to get Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and I got to get a better website and everything else, and it's like, where do you go and where do you put your money, and how do you effectively do it? And the big issue is seeing where it's best spent, and that's difficult, extremely difficult. Currently that's my biggest problem. Another issue was, along the lines of employees. Mm-hmm. Early on, I was laughing at people saying, I have problems with employees. And I had my friends working for me, so I had no problems. We got along great. Everything worked out well. And then I started having to have more employees. And at first it worked out well, but that's been changing, because the job market in Helena is so tight now. And it's difficult getting good people. And my biggest resource for good people is my customers either saying they want to work part-time, or alternately, my daughter needs a job or my son needs a job. I've got a second-generation girl working for me now. Her father worked for me. She's working for me. She says I'll have a third generation when she has kids. And we get a lot of that. And it's kind of funny. It's, it used to be when you're young, you'd hear the old guys say, yeah, you younger generation are all useless. And the problem is it's not just young people. It's you get great people, young, middle-aged, and older. And the young people, I find out, they're not bad. They just don't know what to do necessarily. And that's what I like about getting the high school kids, because I'll get them at high school. And if they go to Carroll, I'll have them through college. If they go out of town like UM or MSU, I get them back in the summer. I get them back for vacations. I got one girl that works for me. She's coming back for one day because it's spring break at UM, and she has one day free. So she's going to come work for me for a day because she likes working in the store. And the big thing I see is when you get these younger people, you can train them and you can show them how to do it. You give them a good work ethic, and they appreciate it. And I've had them numerous times come back saying, basically thank me for it, because they know how to work, and it helps them get a good job. Not saying that working for me isn't good, but the pay's not.
Well, it's funny you say that about your terrible pay. No, I'm kidding. Rex, it's funny you raise this, because I was just working with a restaurateur recently, and it really blew my mind. His young kids stick with him for years because he spends 2 weeks training them before they ever get to serve a table. That blew my mind, and his response to me was, number one, he wanted to make sure that those kids knew exactly how they were supposed to do their job. He wanted it to be very, very clear. And number two, he said, they all want to learn. And that's not something I hear very often from people. It was really eye-opening to me.
Yeah, that's the thing that I found is, you'll get these people in, and basically as long as you get, the biggest issue we've had is the real quiet kids that aren't, socially adept. They're not used to being out with people, but we change them. And the big thing you see is these guys do want to learn. It's like, they want to learn. This might not be their goal for the rest of their life, but they do want to learn what they're doing, and they do want to know how to do it, and they definitely want to know how to do it right. And I got to commend him on giving them 2 weeks because, it's not only good for them. They feel confident. They know how to talk to somebody. They really know what they're doing. I remember I was a waiter back in the day, and it was just, okay, there's a table, ask them what they want, take care of them. Well, you learn over time, but it's so much more comfortable. I talk a lot, but there's times when I'd be a little timid about something because I have no idea what's going on. And you start talking to somebody you've never seen before in your life. You don't know anything about them. And all of a sudden, you have to take care of them and you have to keep them happy. And that's difficult. But with 2 weeks training, that would be fantastic. And these guys want to know. And they not just want to know, they want to do it right. They don't want to be a screw up. They want to do it right. And they definitely want to give the customer a good experience. The young kids really go for that because they want to make people happy. And, learn the product, learn what they're selling, and keep the people happy.
So you're also in the real estate business, as I understand it. What are some of the things you've watched happen in Helena that have really shaped real estate here?
The big thing it seems to be is like, we rent rental apartments, and I also have houses for rent. And the biggest issue I've got is it's keeping affordable housing is one of the biggest problems because, that's one of the issues we have downtown. We're trying to get downtown developed, but, keeping affordable housing for people with the cost of construction anymore, it's getting tougher and tougher. You look at new housing. There's a lot of new housing coming in, and that's been an issue for me because a lot of people, I've got older buildings, and I try to keep them as affordable as I can. We do lots of improvements. We refinish hardwood floors. We put in new appliances, new countertops, new everything like that. But it's always staying on top of it. And the biggest issue I see is it's getting tougher and tougher for people to have a nice place to live and be able to afford it. Because you look at the price of houses now, and you look at people's wages, and certainly some people are getting paid very well in Helena, but for the most part, most people are not getting any real fantastic salary. They're getting paid, and they're getting paid pretty well, but you look at the price of a house, it's tough. And I think the biggest issue we have to look forward to in the future is if the interest rates go up anymore, it's going to really push people out of the housing market more into the apartments. One of the things that's going on that I think is fantastic is RMDC is going to be operating, I think it's 140 new units of affordable housing, which will be not like Section 8 housing, but for what I consider the people that are working and really putting an effort forth to get things going. And they will get a little bit of rent relief, which is going to be great. They'll be able to have affordable housing. And that's what I see getting to be less and less because new construction, especially if you're going to be doing it downtown because property is expensive, it's tough to build anything that's affordable for a person. It's pretty high rent. And that's the issue, is keeping that in line. That seems to be the biggest thing. And regulations are getting tougher and tougher to comply with. It doesn't matter if it's a ADA regulation, fire code, building code. It's just all getting a little bit tougher, which in some cases is good because I believe, being ADA compliant is an excellent thing. A fire code, there's a reason for it. And building code, again, same story, but it's difficult to comply all the time.
I can only imagine. I talk a lot about Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he talks a lot about real estate as being one of the fundamentals of your investment bucket. It is definitely held true. You brought up the interest rates that you think if interest rates go up, and I just saw an article this morning on CNBC saying that interest rates had just dropped. We're down in the low fours. But you said if interest rates go up, it's going to push more people to rentals. What's the premise of that? Where have you seen that happen so that our listeners might be educated by that?
Well, in the past, farther back when we did have high interest rates, that was the biggest issue. People couldn't sell their house because it was too expensive to pay the mortgage. And this is back more when my father was running the properties more so than me running the properties. And you could see as the rates went up, people couldn't sell houses. Houses came down, so somebody that had a pocket full of money could get a house for a much more reasonable price as long as they could pay for the house pretty much entirely. And you could get better deals on houses, but the problem is the working person could not afford to pay the interest rate. So what happens is if you had a house, great. You've got a house and you're probably pretty much stuck with it unless you have a really motivating reason to move. And, with interest rates now, you can buy a more expensive house than you normally could afford because the interest rates are so late. And again, I saw the Fed announce that there will be no increases for the rest of 2019, which, I'm not saying I don't believe what they're saying, but interest rates, I believe, are really low. And they've stayed low for a long time, a surprisingly long time, kind of like the market has stayed good for a long time. And that's my biggest issue is I'm always wondering about what's going to happen. And truly, though, if you do see interest rates go up, which I think is inevitable, that'll stagnate the price of housing is I think what'll happen. And then it's just an affordability thing. People can't afford to pay the high interest rates. Down payment's the biggest issue, I think, now with most people. And it forces more people into rentals, which is good for someone like me that has rentals. And I'm always looking for more rentals because I like rental properties. I like staying busy, and that's something that'll definitely keep you busy.
What are some of the difficulties of getting into the rental business?
I think the biggest issue is you need to, I started small with houses, and I just kept moving my way up. I like big properties because they're easier to take care of. You start looking at buildings that are 5 units and more. The biggest one I have is 32 units. And that one is great. You have a little community there. But the big issue is, how do you get a down payment for that building? And that's the big thing. You start looking at commercial interest rates, which are higher than standard interest rates that normal people are going to see. Commercial rates are definitely quite a bit higher, 1/2 to 1 point higher. And you start looking at having to borrow money for a commercial one. Unless you can find someone where you can buy properties, like ideally, if you can find someone that has a house or smaller units like 2, 3, 4 units, hopefully you can get someone that can carry the note or let you in with a lower down because bank's going to want a nice down payment to carry it. Whereas I was fortunate on the biggest building I owned, I was in with very little down, and I pretty much set the terms. I was paying 5%. I bought it 8 years ago, and I was paying 5% interest rate because I had very little down. And it's a higher interest rate a little higher than normal, but it worked out well for me, and I was able to pay the building off in 8 years. And the big problem is I'm looking for more big properties, but again, I'm looking now at the issue of I'm finally accumulating a little bit of cash to buy something with, but it's a down payment. You start looking at a down payment on a $2 million building, you have to come up with $400,000, $500,000. That's a chunk. And then you start looking at the higher commercial rates, and it's like you have to make sure that it's going to work before you even look at it. And most property owners are going to make sure that it will work before they sell to you because they don't want it back.
Absolutely.
And usually you'll find, what I find quite often is most of these big buildings, quite often the owner will carry it for you. It's usually they'll give you like a 5-year balloon or something so you can get running, get everything going, and then find a commercial loan or something
Yeah.
to get you started.
The really important point there for our listeners is somebody who's looking to get into a bigger building, the one benefit there is over that 5-year term is how you're building your equity, right? So that then when that note balloons that the seller carried, then you have enough equity that the bank will take you on.
Yeah. At that point, the bank is happy to see you because you've got some good equity. They know that you have a sound business plan. They know that the property is working. They know everything's going well. They know that you know what you're doing, and that's the big thing. It's tough to get into a big building unless, you can find some kind of owner that wants to sell it to you, and that's what I'm looking for is a guy that's, the business owner, property owner out there that's getting tired. They're getting older. They're tired of dealing with people. They're just kind of don't want to maintain it, don't want to have to work on it. I myself like to be there. I'm on my bigger buildings. I'm there every day. The people know me. It's kind of fun. It's like your own little community. And I really love it. I like having that building, and I think the people enjoy being there. For smaller people, though, I like looking at, houses and 2, 3, 4, 5-unit buildings. If you stay smaller, like 4 units and less, you're not considered commercial. You get 5 and up, you're commercial, and everything changes. Like you get 4 units less, you can get a non-commercial electrician, you can get a non-commercial plumber, but anything bigger than that, you have to have a commercial electrician, your rates go up. And the nice thing about buying a smaller place is if you have an interest in living there, that saves you a lot of money, and you can keep an eye on the people that are in the building so you have a better idea what's going on. It's easier to get into, and the nice thing about having houses, if you do need to raise some quick money, it's a lot easier to sell a $250,000, $300,000 house than it is a $2 million building. And houses are nice for somebody to get into. Like my thing is whenever I have a friend buy a new house, I try to convince them to keep the old house, start renting it. Because, there you're really building even more equity, and you can kind of keep it going. You know the house inside and out. You know what's going on, and it's easy to get into. And it's just great because, you have a property that you're extremely familiar with, and you know everything about it. Whereas it's just such a mystery. It's like I get friends all the time. I'm looking at this 2-unit or this 3-unit or this 4 or whatever, and I just, can you come take a look at it with me? And the whole thing has to come down to, financially, is it going to work? And the big thing I look at is you have to be able to make a down payment. That's the key on all of it.
Yeah, it's funny. I get people who call and they say, can you help me with the contract of buying into it? And my first question is always, have you talked to your CPA about whether or not you can afford this? Because the single biggest factor I see almost inevitably is they haven't put a big enough down payment on it so that all the money is going back to the bank from the rents. Mm-hmm. And then it comes to tax time and they get a big tax bill because the depreciation isn't enough to offset the income that's earned. And then they say, well, how is this possible? I didn't get a dime out of it. It all went to the bank. And they don't understand that repayment of debt is actually income.
That's it.
And so they get killed by the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the fact that you're calling for people to make sure you've got enough down payment.
That's the big thing, because you have to have the down, because you have to have that pad, and you have to learn that's not your money. That somebody else owns that money that you have in your hand. It's either going to be the state with taxes, it's going to be the federal government with taxes, it's going to be insurance. It all adds up, and it's like I look at it, and I basically I figure I lose 2 months to taxes, insurance, upkeep, maintenance, because what happens? You have your nice little 3-unit, and suddenly the hot water tank goes out. You can have some really unhappy people. I don't have hot water, and you're going to have to come up with the money real quick to get the plumber to get a new one in there, because you can't have your people going without hot water, or worst case of all, my water line froze. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that going on right now, in Helena. And all these things are expensive. I do most of my maintenance, and I have a few people that I work with directly, but you start looking at major expenses, that can kill you, especially if you're a new property owner and you don't have a lot built up where you have a pad. And that's the thing you have to consider is, okay, you're paying the mortgage, you're going to be paying your taxes, because just because you have a big mortgage and a big interest rate doesn't mean you're not going to be paying federal taxes, because you're making a profit. Even though you're not making a penny, you're making a profit. You don't have any money, but that profit is there and you have to pay for it. Then you have to pay your insurance, you have to pay your property tax, you have to pay everything else. And you got to make sure that there has to be some means by which to come up with a little money in case something happens.
Absolutely. I call it the big three. When somebody comes in and wants to talk about rentals, you got to make sure that, number one, you've got liability protection, right? Mm-hmm. So whether you're using an LLC, some way to own the real estate so that if something happens there, it limits your liability exposure. To make sure that you've got the proper insurance on it, so get with your insurance advisor. Don't just wing it. And the third is being aware that events can happen. Right? Frozen pipes to, I had a friend who ended up upside down on a house because it wasn't the pipes that froze, but it was the tree in the yard that ate into the clay pipes leading out to the street, which then backed up all the sewer right into the bathroom. Rather ugly mess for him, and trying to go clean that up, and yet he's got tenants who are in there, and he's having to try and deal with them and then get them moved out, help them go, because he's a good guy. He said, I got to help him find a place. So it was just a real mess for him, and he barely came out of it. But, you've got to have a little bit more cushion. Otherwise, you're just gambling at that point.
Yeah.
And real estate, to me, is not a place to gamble. It's a safety bet if you play it the right way.
That's it. It's like you say, that you don't know what's going to happen, and you have to really do everything you can to accommodate your tenants, because they're reliant on you. You're providing them housing, and you have to have that obligation. You have to give them what they need. And certainly they'll almost always work with you. They'll do whatever they can to make sure it's working, because they want to be there too. But the biggest thing that I look at is you just have to have that pad. You have to have some place where you can draw that money, because it's going to happen sooner or later.
If you had a crystal ball, where would you say that housing is going in the next 10 years?
Well, one of the things that I see is it's kind of funny. I'm kind of a proponent of downtowns. I really like downtowns, and I see, you look at cities around Helena, you look at big cities, people are moving more and more downtown. They want to be centralized. A lot of times they can get to the point where they don't need a vehicle. There's good transportation, everything's close, and I see that a lot. I think, to me, it seems like I see more people wanting to be tighter into the community than being 20 miles out of town, living on a hilltop, although I'd like to do that. But, I just see a lot more downtown development, close to the downtown area where everything's happening. You're closer to work. You're closer to activities like downtown here. We've got Live at 5, Farmers Market, everything going on downtown. We've got a lot of fantastic restaurants and breweries downtown. There's just so much activity. You can find things to do all the time. And that's one of the things about one of my buildings is right on the edge of downtown, and people appreciate being close to downtown. They can walk to a grocery store. They can walk most everywhere. And a lot of people can walk to work because they work in the downtown or the Great Northern area. And it really makes it nice. That's kind of my thing, is I see more people doing that. And that's what I'd like to do, is build another bigger building on our property where the sporting goods store is, and make a larger building where we have retail on the first floor, office space second and third floor, and fourth and fifth floor would be housing.
You know, it's funny you raise that because we haven't seen that as much in Helena yet, but that's been a really big thing in Bozeman for the last several years and Missoula. What do you think is preventing that from happening in Helena? These multi-story buildings where they're putting commercial space on the first floor and then rental space or condos up on the second and third floors.
Well, it's a basic business plan, and of making things work is basically for a downtown area is retail, and then office space, commercial space, second and third floor, and then housing on the top. That is what actually does work. You look at bigger cities, I mean all over, like it doesn't matter where you are, but in large metropolitan areas, that's the way it works because that's what makes a good, vibrant area. And you have everything right there. And this is a kind of, I don't really understand why Helena is not quite following like Missoula and, or I shouldn't say following, isn't in the position of Missoula or Bozeman, especially you look at Bozeman. Some of those condos downtown are $1 million. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's Bozeman. You know, I'm used to Bozeman from back when I went to school there a long time ago when it was just like a little cowboy town. But it's really grown up. I truly believe that Helena is the next in line because it's gotten so expensive in Bozeman. And I believe Helena is much nicer than Bozeman. It truly is. You look at our recreational abilities here. We've got the South Hills. We've got Spring Meadow. We have got far more recreation than Bozeman does. You know, the only thing Bozeman has going for it is it has MSU. We are so much better. We're so far superior to Bozeman. I cannot stop on how great Helena is compared to Bozeman. It is just way better for lifestyle. And it's affordable. That's the big thing. I think the biggest issue right now is I think one of the big issues that's cutting back on growth in Helena as far as office space and the vision I have of retail, office, and housing is the fact that the state has a kind of a moratorium on buying any new office space or expanding anything they have right now. And because of that, that's like you can see what happened with the old Blue Cross Blue Shield buildings. Everyone expected the state to move in there, but that didn't happen. But we did get a good outcome because they do have I think it's the higher education people are now in the one building on Park Avenue. And then the older Blue Cross Blue Shield building downtown has been taken over by the law enforcement center, which is a fantastic place. They're giving tours right now too. And it really worked out great because this is what's nice about downtown is we're getting infill. You know, people are moving back in. You know, when a building empties out, they're moving back in. And I think that if I look at it from the aspect, if I could find businesses that are interested in office space on the building that we're looking at, I could get the family partnership to kick in the money to build the building. It'd be no issue. The problem is getting that property rented first. And that's the thing that's stopping us right now. And I think it's probably an issue with other people. There's a lot of organizations that want to move to Helena. And one of the only downside I can see about moving to Helena is if you wanted to start a new, bigger business and I don't like to say this publicly, it's tough to hire people here right now.
Why do you say that? Why is it so hard? And I can't dispute it because I face it, constantly in my business, but why is it hard to hire people here?
It's just we have such a horribly low unemployment rate. You know, you look at it, and I've heard anywhere from 1.5 to 2% is where we're at right now. And you're getting down there. You're really, really getting down there. And like I say, I'm taking my pool of people as unemployed people that aren't in there because I'm picking up high school kids. I'm picking up college kids. I'm getting a few of the people I'm hiring are from our current pool, but I'm getting a lot of, high school and college kids that are not in that pool. So I'm going that route. I'm not a big thief of employees, which is what you see a lot of. You find someone you like, and I go to another store and I see some guy that's given a great job. He's treating people well, and I'm thinking, man, I'd like him to work for me. But I just can't stealing him because somebody worked awfully hard to get him and train him. And I'm not going to stab that guy in the back because it's just rough. But I think that's one of the big issues, because I was talking to a fellow they were talking about opening a call center in Helena. He was going to rent, his wife was moving to Helena, and he was going to rent an apartment for her here. And we were looking at one of my apartments. And I was telling him about it, and I was talking to him about our unemployment rate, and he was finding the same issue, and they ended up opening their call center in Great Falls because they couldn't find enough people here. It's like you look at, the big thing is the new market that just opened. They hired 160, 170 people, I believe they said. That's a lot of people. That really reduces it. We've got Blue Cross Blue Shield. We've got the city, state, federal governments. We've got Boeing. We've got, I think, Northrop Grumman has a footprint here. You know, we've got a lot of things. We have SoFi, which has fantastic jobs. We got a lot of businesses in town that hire an awful lot of people. And there's a lot of these smaller businesses, like a lot of people don't know about SoFi. And they have some fantastically good paying jobs. They hire people and they treat them extremely well. I mean, I love going over to that area and, you know, hanging out, if I get an opportunity to go into SoFi, because they got a fantastic break area. But we've got lots of places like that, but those people are coming in from out of town. And that's one of the issues is with somebody opening up is I think we're going to be seeing our population of available people is going to be increasing, you know, as time goes by, because right now we're just in a tight spot. But I do believe we are going to see more employable people. And I really think education is heading in the direction of making employable people. That's one of the things they're working at, you know, in high school and in college, is getting people jobs that they can walk right into, you know, training them so they can walk into a job. And I see that happening a lot. And we're very fortunate having HCT right here, which trains people for a lot of the necessities that we have.
Yeah, it is really interesting to watch it here. I've been in Helena now since 2006 and was in Butte before that. But really interesting when I moved up here to see how tight the labor market has been here for the last 10 years, and even more so in the last 5 years. And that's been very problematic for a lot of businesses here. Matter of fact, it was just talking with the folks at MBAC here, and we had a tech company that was trying to come into Helena, and they basically said, folks, if you come here, you are going to really struggle, because we can get tech companies in that need 5 to 10 employees, but when you're looking at needing 50 employees, that's just really tough in our marketplace right now, and we want businesses that succeed, not businesses that are going to come in and struggle because we can't help meet your need unless you're bringing the people in here. So it was just really interesting to hear those kinds of things from other businesses, because for the longest time I thought it was just my world and the legal world having a hard time finding people in our world.
Yeah, that's it. MBAC is a fantastic source of information. We deal with them quite a bit through the Business Improvement District, and those guys at MBAC are just fantastic, and they're going to give you the information you need. And that is one of the issues. That's why, you know, I don't like saying it publicly, you know, that we have a employment issue here, because I don't want to drive anyone away. You know, I want to see people come to Helena because it's a fantastic place. It's a great place to be. But it is an issue. If you want to have a big business where you're going to need a lot of people, it's going to be tough. I don't know how the grocery, the only thing I can think of with the grocery is those guys had to get a lot of part-timers.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere else to get them. And that's one of the things you see about Montana workers is Montana, I believe they claim in the U.S. is one of the states with the highest rate of second and third job people, you know, where they have to have a second and third. It's also because the pay in Montana is not always the greatest. But the one thing about having the low employment rate is it's good for the employees because the employer has to sharpen his skills to keep them. And that's the big thing is like my big thing at the store is we try to make it like being at home. The customers say the same thing. It's like kind of like going, you know, being at home, you know, it's fun, you know, and we let the people have fun. We treat them well. We can't pay them as well as we'd like to pay them maybe, but they like it there. And that's the big thing.
Let's do a quick turn back to the outdoor sports industry. We've been talking some great employment stuff here, some real estate. I'm really interested in the way of clothing. I feel like we've kind of gone back in time to Mork and Mindy, right? When Mork would wear the puffy jacket, because now all of a sudden, like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I saw someone wearing a puffy jacket and I about fell over laughing because I hadn't seen one in so long. Those jackets have made a huge resurgence. I've got one on the back of my chair. They're just lighter these days than they used to be. What's going on in the apparel industry there? I mean, Gore-Tex was such a big thing. What's something new that's happening there?
Well, the big thing seems to be the waterproof breathables are big. The biggest thing on the waterproof breathables is making them more breathable because, you can keep the water out, but it's also difficult. You want to make sure you move the moisture. When somebody's active, you want to make sure they can get that moisture out, not just like pumping their coat back and forth a little bit to try to get it out. And that's one of the big issues you see is that's coming along. Footwear is the thing where, it's the area where I see tremendous difference. And not from the fashion aspect, because shoes are looking better. And I mean, it's kind of fun to look at people's shoes. But the big thing about them is it doesn't matter if it's a hiking boot, a big work boot, or just shoes in general that you can be out walking around in. They've gotten so comfortable and so light, and they breathe well. You can get a light, airy shoe, and they'll give you support. You can get these ultralight running shoes that are so light, you hardly even know you have anything on besides socks, and they're going to give you fantastic support. And you'll be able to run in them. You'll be able to, you can get hiking boots that you can hike on rough terrain. Your feet are comfortable. 20 years ago, you get boots, and they weren't quite so good, but now there's a big comfort level there. And then, like you say, clothing, just basic clothing. The big thing is moving the moisture away from your body, keeping you comfortable. They have thermally regulating type clothing. It's just keeps getting better and better. They're getting more and more of the bug-resistant clothing. And you'll notice that outerwear, I shouldn't say outerwear, shirts and sometimes jackets, but primarily shirts and clothing like that has an SPF rating now because people are realizing skin cancer is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. And it makes a huge difference. People are concerned about what they're doing. Sure, they want to go out, they want to have a great experience, they want to have a good time, but they also don't want to pay the price in some other way. And everything just seems to be going in two continuous directions. It's getting lighter and more durable. And that's the big things you're looking at.
I was just about to say that. A good buddy of mine, Jason Schuyler, who he and I guided fishing trips years ago in our younger days, he's the Columbia sales rep. And every time he shows up, he's got some new jacket, and it's lighter. It seems to be more durable, more waterproof. And I'm just always blown away at what these new companies are coming out with. And it doesn't matter if it's Arc'teryx to Columbia, even when you talk about in the fishing world, which is the world I know the most, Sims locally, but also Orvis, Reddington, all these companies just keep coming out with new products that are just lighter and lighter. Now you can go to the jungle and have a raincoat that you're not going to die in.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the one that really surprised the heck out of me was the bug-resistant ones that you were just talking about. I mean, you can get bug-resistant clothing of any type.
Yeah, you can. And the big thing is it's not just resistant for a little while. It's resistant long-term, and it'll go through the big changes. It's resistant for multiple washings. You can wash that clothes because the early stuff, you couldn't wash it a lot. And you'd end up wearing a shirt that maybe you wore a little more than you wanted to, but it kept the bugs away. Now you can actually wash that shirt and keep it going. They even, again, along the lines of odor and stuff, they're putting antimicrobials in clothing to keep you fresher when you're out there. And that's always a nice thing. But it's just getting better and better, and the innovation is there because people, again, they want a good experience. And the market is listening. They're going to give you what you want.
Absolutely. Are you seeing that millennials now, all this, are we getting an uptick in our youth getting back outdoors? Because it seemed like for a while there that youth had fallen off, and we saw that in fishing licenses, hunting licenses. Are we starting to see a turnaround, or is the industry making active moves to get younger people back into the outdoors?
Well, the industry is always working to get people outdoors, no matter who they are. They're going to work to get them out. And you are seeing it more. They are getting out more. And again, I think a big basis for that is, again, what we're talking about, clothing. It's like you look at fishing. Back in the day, what'd you have? The big, ugly, heavy waders, or if you cold weather, you had the big, heavier, insulated rubber waders that were miserable. There's nothing good about them. Now you have some super ultralight Gore-Tex type waders that weigh nothing. They're easy to get in and out of. It's the same, it's again, I think the big thing, especially like the millennials, they want an experience. And they don't mind having to pay a little more to have a good time having that experience and being able to have that experience, because you have the clothing, the footwear, etc., that'll allow you to get out there and do it. And now you have the camping equipment, you have everything you need. And it's only getting better. And more people are getting back out because they realize it's great out there.
Well, I sure know that if we can get more people to move to Helena, and I know some people will want to kill me for saying that, but we could certainly help with our unemployment issue here. We could get more people outdoors and enjoying the outdoors here. I love seeing people on the trails here. My wife is the Lands Protection Coordinator for Prickly Pear Land Trust, so I know PPLT here is, they do an amazing job with the trails. It is absolutely a fantastic place to live, and I can't say enough, reiterate enough what you said earlier, that it is a great place to live and work and play.
And again, it's like you say, what we have here is fantastic. It's like, I think the big reason, like Bozeman has taken off, Missoula has taken off because they have the college population. Mm-hmm. They get the Bozeman experience. They get the Missoula experience. That's why they like it there. That's why they stay. But they don't realize they can get the Helena experience and have an even better time. It's better here.
Yes, I agree. A lot less crowded.
Yeah.
So, well, Rex, thanks so much for coming. I'm going to wrap things up here, folks. Thank you for joining us today. Again, please catch us on YouTube, on any of our podcast channels. Like us, share us, get us out there. We want to thank TopFloor Studios, our main man, Brad Oldhouse, who's down on the camera and running the sweet sound here that hopefully makes my voice sound something better than what it does. SocialFlixx for doing a great job on the camera, and all our great listeners. We're just blessed to have you here, Rex. Thanks for sharing your day with us. We look forward to having you on here again real soon.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, so that's the Montana business vlog. We're wrapping up, just bringing together businesses across this great state of Montana and hopefully this great country of ours. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.